Good morning, everyone. Sorry to delay you. We have a series of announcements to make. I'm going to start the remarks. You're going to hear from Dr. Hite, great superintendent. You'll hear from State Senator Anthony Hardy-Williams. And after those statements, we'll be glad to try to answer any questions. But I'm also joined by a number of great public servants who are a part of this effort. And as I mentioned, of course, State Senator Anthony Hardy-Williams is here, Dr. Hite, Superintendent, Philadelphia Schools, Dr. Lori Schur, Chief Education Officer for the City of Philadelphia. Three of our SRC members are here with us, Wendell Pritchett, Sylvia Sims, and Feather Houston. Karina Tolson, our Revenue Commissioner, Tom Knudsen, Chief Revenue Collection Officer for the City of Philadelphia, Dr. Don Schwartz, Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services, and Rob DeBoe, the City Finance Director. As Mayor, my goal has been to ensure that every child in the City of Philadelphia is provided a high-quality education, that each young person has a chance to be successful in the classroom, whether in a district-managed school or in a charter school, and that later on, they become a productive, self-sustaining adult. We adults owe our young people a quality education that will help them to develop, that will challenge them, and will teach them new and useful things. We owe our children a rich educational experience with music and art programs, with after-school activities and small class sizes. We owe our students an educational experience in which we have invested in our teachers, in books, computers, and other learning materials. Every day, I talk about the requirements of a 21st century economy. Foremost is my concern that we have an abundance of well-educated Philadelphians to fill the new jobs of an increasingly technical and knowledge-based economy. We will not progress as a city of the future if we do not invest now in our children's education. If we don't focus on our young people and invest in their education now and in the years to come, we won't have the 21st century workforce for the new economy, and we'll have grave difficulties in attracting the new jobs that our city needs. Dr. Hite and the SRC have been quite candid about the school district's fiscal situation over the past year or so, and they have acted, cutting more than $315 million in school-based costs most recently. If we don't provide the new funding sought by the SRC and Dr. Hite, our young people will suffer under a devastating bare-bones budget. The quality of education in Philadelphia will plummet, and we will all suffer as a result. Poverty, unemployment, crime, lost wages, and lack of personal opportunity. Last week, members of the Philadelphia legislative delegation to Harrisburg and I hosted a media conference at the Andrew Jackson Public School. We talked about the need for a shared sacrifice by our city, our Commonwealth, the school district, and our school unions, a shared sacrifice to protect and invest in public education, and more importantly, our children. I was proud to stand with other elected officials and pledged my support then, as I am today. Today I'm announcing a proposed revenue package to generate new money for investing in the education of Philadelphia school children. This set of revenue proposals is sustainable and substantial. The key is it's also doable. As I've already previously announced, I support an increase in the liquor by the drink tax. Our proposed increase will generate approximately an additional $22 million by increasing the tax from 10% to 15%. This proposal is scheduled to start on July 1st, 2013. I'm also proposing a city cigarette tax. The city currently has a tobacco tax, but cigarettes are not included in that tax. The cigarette tax we are proposing would begin in January of 2014 and would be set at $2 per pack. It would generate approximately $45 million in just half of a fiscal year. Almost all the revenue from this tax will be used to invest in educating our children, but a very small amount will go to our health department to continue a smoking cessation program. There are approximately 280,000 smokers in Philadelphia. That is a huge number of people. We have 2,100 smoking-related deaths each year and an enormous smoking-related health care costs as a result. And unfortunately, many of those smokers did start when they were school-age students. We must address this great challenge. Deaths from smoking is the #1 cause of death in the city of Philadelphia. The increase to the liquor by the drink tax and the new cigarette tax proposal will require General Assembly authorization and approval by Philadelphia City Council. We expect bills to be introduced in the Pennsylvania House and Senate very soon. And let me thank the chairs of our two respective delegations, House Chairwoman Representative Sherelle Parker and Chairwoman Senator Shirley Kitchen, for their great leadership, and to thank all the members of our Philadelphia delegation in both the House and the Senate for their concern, for their commitment, and for their leadership as well. The last piece of our revenue package is improved tax collection. It's something that, of course, taxpaying Philadelphians have demanded for a long time, and we've put together a very comprehensive program. Under the leadership of Revenue Commissioner Clarina Tolson and Chief Revenue Collections Officer Tom Knudsen, we anticipate an improvement in tax collection that will result in an additional $28 million for educating our students in the coming fiscal year. We will focus on delinquent real estate taxes, liquor by the drink taxes, use and occupancy, and school income taxes. We're going to get much more aggressive with these non-paying taxpayers, and we'll use outside collection agencies where needed. In total, this is $95 million in new, first-year city-generated revenues, which will benefit the 200,000 Philadelphia school children who are served by the Philadelphia School District and our many charter schools. I propose these two use taxes because we have raised general broad-based taxes twice in the last 2 years on our residents and business owners, and we cannot and should not keep asking them for more. Before I turn things over to Dr. Hite, let me say one last thing. For many of us, when we were kids, we had very strong schools, school systems, and great teachers, regardless of what school system any of us may have attended. And they prepared us for the future. My education at home and in school is a huge part of why I chose a career in public service. My education is and continues to be the main reason for any success that I've ever had in life. The children of this city deserve what many of us have already received. They deserve a high-quality education, and I am going to fight for them to have just that. I want to introduce Dr. William Hite, who in his first year as Philadelphia Superintendent has faced and taken head-on the systemic fiscal issues at our school district and has clearly made it clear that the buck stops with him. I know what I said. I want to make sure you all are paying attention. He and the SRC have made some very tough choices. They've made choices to ensure the quality of education that our school district provides to our children. He has my full support. And now it's time for our political leaders to step up or step aside. Dr. Hite.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank you. I want to thank members of council, I want to thank members of the delegation. here in Philadelphia for taking our requests seriously. And we are pleased that you are offering your support, and I'm thrilled that you've identified now a pathway to get there and to allow us to realize the revenue that we so desperately need. We are trying to do something for all students in Philadelphia. We want to dramatically increase achievement, and we want to dramatically increase achievement of all students. And so all means not a few, not some, not those with means, not those who are English speakers as their first language, but those who learn English as well, those with IEPs, those coming from circumstances of poverty. All means all. And in order to do that, we have to realize their right to a high-quality education regardless of where they attend school. We talked earlier in January in an action plan about 2 anchor goals: dramatically increasing the performance of all students and only spending what we have. Because we're only spending what we have this year, it is producing school-based budgets that hinder our ability to educate all students. It removes some essential parts of what we think a normal education should provide. Things like art, music, extracurricular activities, athletics. It takes out essential positions like guidance counselors, assistant principals, secretaries. Those things don't represent schools, and those things don't allow us to provide adequate supports and services for all of the young people of this city. So I'm thrilled that the mayor, members of council, members of our delegation have taken seriously this request and are working to help us resolve these issues. This is about sharing in the sacrifice. We have, unfortunately, had to take the unprecedented action of, over the last 18 months, closing 31 schools. We've asked from our blue-collar workers for concessions. We're also asking for concessions from all of our other workers that are on par with those that have already been exhibited by SEIU. I and members of my team are also taking cuts. And so this notion of shared sacrifice means that the revenue that we've requested from both the city and the state and the additional concessions that we're asking from our members are to really address this period that we're in. We don't intend to live here forever, but it is something that we have to navigate at the moment, and it's going to take all hands on deck to allow us to do that. So once again, I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank members of council. I want to thank our partners in the charter community, because we've also stopped, at least for 1 year, the expansion of charters. And it's really important to understand why that's necessary. It's necessary because without $304 million this year, our charters take a reduction the following year. So this just doesn't impact the district schools, it impacts all of our children. So that's why this is so critically important. And so this notion of shared sacrifice really gets back to our most precious resource, and that those are the children of this city. And I, like the mayor and all of the other members standing behind me, are committed to doing whatever I can do to advocate and to provide those students with an adequate education. This is not the time to be talking about austerity, but instead a time to be talking about investments, and investments in the youth of this city. So once again, Mayor, to the members of our delegation, Senator Williams and all of his colleagues, and to our SRC members, and to everyone else who has helped us with this issue, I'm thrilled that you have found a means for us to begin to think about ways to generate this revenue. Thank you.
Good morning to all who are collected here today. I've been told sometimes at press conferences I look a little bit too stoic or serious, and so I was actually working in the background to smile. because this is a significant day for Philadelphia, for the region, and for Pennsylvania. And it is a day to be delighted and celebrated. This is a day where finger pointing has deceased. About 2 months ago, people from, I guess, the SRC came to see me, and then Dr. Hite and others came to see me and explained to me the situation of the $304 million which was needed in a very short period of time. And the question was, what do we do? And they laid out their plan, and they told me what their plan was. And I will tell you that honestly, I was a little bit more than skeptical about the possibilities of arriving at such a day where people would so quickly and rapidly find policies, practical policies, achievable policies and goals that we could actually achieve in such a short period of time. And I will say this, who's not here, Darrell Clark, who's President of City Council, actually championed the idea of the liquor by the drink several months ago, actually about a year ago, and many of us from the delegation sort of didn't pay a lot of attention to it, didn't give it serious consideration. He brought it up again about 3 months ago, when again, I'm not sure that we necessarily gave him the consideration we should have given him. So I want to give him public acknowledgement that liquor by the drink concept came from Darrell Clark, working with the delegation in Harrisburg, and certainly working with the mayor and the members of the SRC and the school district. And so the point of that is that this is a collaborative effort, and we wanted to make sure, obviously, Harrisburg knows that. For those who question whether it's achievable, because this is enabling legislation from Harrisburg, which is going to generate, I guess, about $60 million, the other 30 coming from collections here. All three are home runs in Harrisburg as we speak today. One, the Philadelphia delegation in the House and the Senate has wrapped their arms around that. I happen to be the odd couple between Shirley Kitchen and Sherelle Parker, and the facilitator of some certain things, but I am quite clear that they speak for themselves and they've spoken to me. So I'm saying things I can say publicly. We will be introducing legislation either today or tomorrow, supporting these provisions that allow the revenue in liquor by the drink, the enabling legislation, I'm sorry, for the liquor by the drink and the sales tax of cigarettes. The mayor has done a marvelous job in terms of working behind the scenes with the administration, the governor's office, members of leadership in the House and the Senate. My sense is, for those who hold some level of skepticism, and I'm saying that for a reason because I understand there's some skepticism in the room, that this is one of the few moments that I would take a risk to come out and publicly say that we feel comfortable that the fact that we're not asking for a tax increase from the state, we're actually asking for, frankly, to solve our own problems a lot more aggressively than we have in the past, that those members of leadership feel very comfortable about supporting us in our own reconciling of our books. And so I think in a very, very short period of time, I mean literally 3 to 4 weeks, this mayor, and I want to point out there's 2 chief executives, the governor and the mayor. With all due respect to the legislative bodies, we have to pass the bills, but they have to actually come up with the ideas, the plans, implement, execute. This mayor has moved a Titanic ship around and is heading in an affirmative way. And what I'm most delighted about is that you have a superintendent who I know, and I clearly am a person who's been critical, and I was invited because hopefully I'm sending a message to my friends who believe in choice, options, and charters. This is not a sacrifice of charters. This is a commitment that we understand if we are all in this boat together, all in this boat together. And for those who think that they can survive it without being in this boat, they are deluding themselves. We are all in this boat together. And so we have a superintendent who has been quite clear to me and others. He is supporting high-achieving seats. So the time and time again when I have to come down here and say, we're sending a lot of money, what are you doing with it? He is clear that he doesn't have a vision, but he has an ability to execute on that vision and deliver children where they should be. And that the rates of dropout, forget the rates of dropout being an issue, the acceptance of colleges in Philadelphia and the surrounding region and nationally will be what it should be and has been historically in Philadelphia. So today really is an extraordinary moment. It is a commitment by an administration that says our children are first. Our educational system will be one that not only is top-notch, but will attract people to Philadelphia to want to come here, stay here, raise their families here. And this superintendent and this SRC have laid out policies that all of us within that delegation, regardless of how diverse and sometimes how complex or confusing it may be, all of us are wedded to, committed to, and we are wedded by the time this budget ends to have these bills, these policies in place, so City Council can execute what it desires to execute. Thank you very much.
Be glad to take questions. Through the wonders of technology, during the course of this press conference, I just received a text message from State Senator Vincent Hughes, who wanted to be here but could not. But the message is, the bill numbers are SB 944 on the liquor by the drink tax and SB 945 on the city cigarette tax that just came in just a couple minutes ago. I want to thank Senator Hughes for that up-to-the-minute information. With that, I'd be glad to try to take any questions.
Mayor, obviously would like that those pieces of legislation passed as soon as possible, but is there do you need those passed in the legislature's current session, particularly
Yes.
the cigarette tax?
Yes.
And why then is the cigarette tax not enacted until January?
We believe that with a new tax, it will take some time. This is the first time for this particular tax. It takes some, what we might refer to as ramp-up time. So we want to be conservative in our estimate and take the position that it will take a few months. Normally, for most taxes, they either usually start July 1 or January 1. This is a brand new one for the city. We want to be conservative and cautious about it, and we figure it will take a few months to get everything that needs to be in place, notice and all kinds of advertising, et cetera, et cetera.
And I asked why a flat dollar figure per pack as opposed to a percentage of sales. You said $2 per pack.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Why do a $2 per pack as opposed to, say, 10% on the cost?
10% of what?
The cost of the pack of cigarettes. Usually tax.
Because it fluctuates. I mean, people sell them at different prices. It is much more accurate to have a per pack tax. I believe that's the same way the state does it. A pack is a pack. You sell it at whatever you sell it for, but a pack is a pack, and it's $2 on a pack, and so it's very easy, quite frankly, I'm assuming for accounting purposes, to keep track of it. But I believe the state taxes at a per pack rate as well. So we're consistent with what the state has done.
Mayor, the three of you have spoken about shared sacrifice, but most of that sacrifice seems to be being requested from people who live and work in the city of Philadelphia. Have city schools not been under majority state control for the past decade? What's being requested for those?
I'm sorry, who are you?
Daniel Denver City Paper.
I'm sorry.
Daniel Denver, Philadelphia City Paper.
As you may recall, the school district asked, and Dr. Hite and the SRC asked the city for $60 million, asked the Commonwealth for $120 million. At last week's press conference, I said that, and I have been saying for some time, that we would certainly, that I would support the effort to get $60 million at the city level and push hard to get $120 million at the state level. Today's announcement represents, I think, a first big step toward trying to fill what in essence is a $180 million request. The dollars that I've announced today is $95 million. It's a fairly decent down payment toward trying to get the bulk of those dollars. Those conversations will continue. I was in Harrisburg part of the day on Monday and pretty much all day yesterday, meeting with legislative leaders as well as the governor. I think as everyone knows who follows this process, it is a process. It will take some time. This is a start. It's not the end. And we'll continue those conversations. And the legislative leaders and the governor working with us and certainly Philadelphia City Council, again, we have to look at this in a comprehensive fashion. Everyone has to be all in on this one. There will not be one idea. There will not be one source of potential funding to do this. I've always believed that. So for today, as difficult as it may be for some of you, let us at least celebrate that we've started and put some pretty decent money on the table in a process that will continue for some time. Each of us are in our respective budget seasons right now.
Can I add to that?
Sure. Senator.
So, And I think it's an appropriate observation, but I think we need to reference the fact that since the FCC existed, the state has contributed the majority of the tax revenue so the school district can operate. There are poor cities and communities that are supporting their tax effort has been higher than Philadelphia. This elevates Philadelphia to competing with those other communities that have been struggling. And so while it's a logical question, it is an appropriate response from the city to say the SRC is only asking for 60, but it is so significant to us that we're going to find ways to support it above and beyond. And so I think, frankly, as the mayor has stated, it's appropriate for us to ballyhoo the moment, because it means that Philadelphia is not only taking seriously their commitment, they're going above and beyond that. And we also expect that the work with the mayor, who has been quite effective, will provide some results with the current administration in Harrisburg along the lines you're talking about.
Yeah, Jeff.
While it might be nice for the Philadelphia delegation to get behind us, I'm sure the Republicans are going to make a decision. Have you taken the pulse of the Republican politics?
So I mentioned, Jeff, I mentioned some of the things are behind the scene. They will remain behind the scene. But the guy to my left has done a really effective job in talking to appropriate members of leadership, and frankly, some rank and file members, to get a pulse about us empowering ourselves. Clearly, taxes are an issue in Pennsylvania, but this is not a tax that the state would be imposing. This is enabling legislation that allows the Commonwealth to be supportive without getting into the weeds. And I think we've touched enough personalities to have an understanding that they will say we have to study the concepts more thoroughly, but they are clearly helping us in terms of measuring the pulse of their respective caucuses.
And Jeff, and for all of you, I mean, again, let's be realistic. There are a lot of things going on in Harrisburg right now. The governor has his own budget. There's discussion about transportation. There's discussion about any number of other issues. And, we're, one of 67 counties, one of 500 school districts in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So there's a fair amount of traffic out there, if you will. And, we have to make our case. I will continue to make that case and work with members of the House, members of the Senate, Democrats, Republicans, City Council, and certainly the governor. But all of these things are happening in real time and at the same time. So there's a lot of competition for, at a minimum, for folks' attention and certainly their resources.
How much money is going to smoking cessation, and is there concern with the soda tax that was listed as a mixed message that really was a revenue measure, but you're dressing it up as a health measure? Yeah,
I understand. I don't think there'll be any confusion about this. The $95 million package is the $95 million package. The estimate above that 95 in a half year, it would be $1 million to the smoking cessation program, and in a full year, it would be $2 million. Again, with no impact on the 95, which is a first year number. And again, in a second year, because we're only counting on a half a year of tobacco tax revenues, that number in a second year would go to $80+ million. So again, given the fact that many smokers in Philadelphia do start often, unfortunately, as school-aged children, given that we lose 2,100 Philadelphians a year to smoking-related deaths, we have the highest smoking percentage population of any major city in the United States of America. This is a very, very small amount of financial resource to go into something that is very, very important to increase life expectancy and certainly productivity here in the city. But there should be no mixed message. There's a significant resource from this particular tax going directly where it should go, which is to invest in educating our children. Yes.
Have you talked to City Council about these proposals, specifically Council President Clark, and what do they think?
I've had a couple of direct conversations with Council President Clark about both of these ideas. As Senator Williams indicated, was actually in a conversation with the Council President a few months ago that he raised with me the prospect of a liquor by the drink tax increase, which I indicated I was interested in. And I think I've been consistent in my public statements about that. I raised the issue with him, with Council President Clark, not too long ago about the cigarette tax, and I don't really want to characterize for him his response other than interest, and I said I'd get back to him with additional information about it. Council President Clark cares about public education and, more importantly, the students in the city of Philadelphia. He's a public school graduate himself. There are a lot of issues going on here at the city level, as I responded to Jeff. Fair amount of activity up in Harrisburg, fair amount of activity here in Philadelphia. But the process starts in Harrisburg with enabling legislation, and we'll work through the process here in the city. But I would not further characterize where he is or might be on this particular issue.
Mayor, you've raised taxes the last couple of years in this is new taxes. Were there any opportunities for cuts? Majority of the entire time in that direction?
Sean, I think you may have missed this. Last year, the school district cut $700 million out of its budget. Let me finish my answer. Significantly and dramatically reduced the administration up at 440 North Broad. Borrowed $300 million in order to pay bills. And as far as the city is concerned, we've made numerous cuts over the past few years in the aftermath, during and in the aftermath of the recession. What we're talking about is consistent, stable, secure funding. And anything that the city provides directly under Act 46, we must continue to provide. The liquor by the drink tax has been in effect since 1994. I voted for it. I was proud to do so then and remain so today. It generates $45 million. It has been one of the most consistent, stable taxes that funds the school district that we've had. With regard to the cigarette tax, as I mentioned earlier, we have a tax on tobacco. It does not cover cigarettes. These are both use taxes, and those who use, pay taxes on those uses right now. Because we have raised property taxes twice in the last 2 years, because we raised UNO last year, I did not want to look at those, as my comments indicated, those general broad-based taxes again, as these residents and business owners have contributed significantly. We've added $90 million more from the city since FY10 in additional resources for the school district. And so at this point, I thought that we should look at other potential revenue sources. Yes, ma'am?
Thank you.
Okay. Can we? Yeah. No. Right. Let me finish the questioning with the news media, and I appreciate that, and I respect you as a parent. Any other media questions? Dave.
I just wanted to ask Superintendent Hite. You talked about shared sacrifice, and if we get this revenue package from the city, but nothing additional from the state, and the CFT refuses its requested concession, what kind of school district are we like?
Well, first, I think at least on today, Dave, I'd like to be a little more optimistic than the two negative scenarios that you've proposed. That adults have a responsibility here to the children of this city. I'd like to think that there are enough caring adults in the city of Philadelphia, especially in our elected ranks and in leadership ranks and in our union ranks, that the shared sacrifice message is palatable and understandable. We are in an economic crisis, and in economic crises, everyone has to put something on the table. So I'm going to remain optimistic about the rest of the things that need to happen. And I know that they are tough, but we've done tough things here in this city before, and if we can't do tough things on behalf of our children, then I'm not sure you should be in public office.
Mayor, I respect that. I asked a direct question to Superintendent Hite. My question is...
No, the question was to me, I thought.
I thought I said Superintendent Hite.
I missed that. Sorry.
Well, if I could ask him to comment, if you don't get these other two legs of shared sacrifice for
Sure. And I did not hear the first part of your thing. Doc?
Be glad to comment. And thank you for the question. And so part of that question is making sure that we have the ability to serve students in our receiving schools. Naturally, we would have to look at how we would work with the amount of revenue, but those things that we think are essential for our children's education become really important. So we think that students need to be supported in schools. We think that there need to be extracurricular activities. There are some contracted and statutory requirements. We would have to look at all of those things and base it on the amount of revenue that we receive.
And so even though it wasn't directed at me, but I think what Dr. Hite has described, albeit accurate, and albeit the most honest picture of what would happen. I said this the other day, and I'll say it again. From my perspective, that's not school. That's not school. That's a building with a principal trying to do his or her best, with some teachers trying to do his or her best, with nothing, with no resources. That is not a good quality educational experience for any young person here in this city. And all of us as adults should be ashamed of ourselves if we were to allow that to somehow pass for school. Yes. Mike.
The $28 million through revenue enhancements, you have previously, within the last 12 months or so, announced additional measures for revenue enhancement, including the hiring of Mr. Knudsen. Is this $28 million on top of the savings or additional revenues that you had projected at those announcements? And if so, how is this 28 achieved?
The answer is yes. It's on top of, and it's because I have driven our folks almost insane with pushing very, very hard that given the investments that we're making, the leadership of Rob DeBow in the finance office, Karina Tolson as the new revenue commissioner, Tom Knudsen as the chief revenue collections officer, support that we're seeking in Harrisburg to enhance some of our powers, and just that we are going to be the junkyard dogs of revenue collection. We are going to get that money. It is owed to us, and we're going after it very aggressively.
But the mechanism by which you achieve this 28 are the various things that you have previously announced? Is that?
Many of them, yes.
Is there anything that has?
We are seeking some additional authority from the Commonwealth to give us that much more leverage on folks who owe us money. So, for instance, Chairwoman Sherelle Parker has introduced a bill, I believe it's House Bill 388, that would allow us, for people who owe us money, who may own property outside the city of Philadelphia. Presently, we can only place a lien on property in the city. With that legislation, we'd be able to place a lien on any property anywhere in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It just strengthens our hand. The team is, this is a good team. And I think that much of the work they've done internally just over the past 3 weeks or so, that both have been on the ground, will produce some additional results, and I've pushed them very hard.
Could I just follow up quickly? The $28 million, is this being added into the revenue projections for FY14 that you had?
It will be.
It will be?
Yeah.
And you're earmarking it then for the school district?
Yes. It's school money. These are dollars that, were they collected, would go to schools anyway. It's real estate tax, it's liquor tax, it's use and occupancy tax, a bunch of the things that I mentioned, those are for schools. I mean, real estate tax is a 54-46 split.
Are you doing the smoking prevention activities inside the schools?
That's a really good question. Well, I guess the first prevention program is they don't allow smoking in schools. Yeah, right, that's a start. I can get you information about that. I don't know whether the programs take place in school, out of school, after school. Doc?
So there is a comprehensive health curriculum in the schools. We're not specifically adding to it around smoking cessation, but we think, in looking from other parts of the country, the most successful effort that government can do specifically is to enforce existing laws about who can legally buy tobacco. So we have beefed up over the last 3 years our efforts to enforce existing laws about illegal sale to youth, and we've reduced illegal sale by about 20% during that time.
But there are companies specifically inside the school to educate the kids about smoking cessation.
It's part of the comprehensive health curriculum that already exists in the schools.
I have a question.
2 last questions.
Superintendent, sir, since this package is worth $35 million more than what you had asked of the city, are you lowering your ask to the state by that amount?
No, we've already made a set of recommendations to the SRC, who then forwarded our requests to both the city and to the state. So it doesn't change what we have requested from either of those two groups, nor does it change the amount of the concessions from our partners in labor.
I mean, it's still a 180 number. Dale?
I guess it's the presence of both of you, Mayor and Superintendent. I've heard talk in Harrisburg, and I've talked to some people in Harrisburg saying that they don't want to give any money to the city unless they know there will be labor concessions, and I'm just wondering how that plays out with the timing of everything, and whether that's what we're hearing from them too, that they might be interested, if they can find the money, because they have their own whole club, and if they are leaning toward making contingent on some kind of concessions.
Yeah, Dale, what I would say is, I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. This is certainly one of the issues that has come up, but I think also folks recognize that the contract negotiations are ongoing. The contract actually doesn't expire until August 31st, and so, how that all gets worked out, remains to be seen. But the other part of that conversation that I've also had with folks up in Harrisburg is the absolute recognition that this SRC is doing everything that they legally are allowed to do. They're making very, very tough decisions. Folks are very much aware, especially those in southeastern Pennsylvania, very much aware of many of the day-to-day activities, including school closings, including cuts in services and reduction in costs. So people are paying attention, and I think that the SRC and Dr. Hite are getting very, very high reviews because of the tough and difficult choices that they are making. Folks in Harrisburg are paying attention to all the aspects of what's been going on here in Philadelphia. Last question. Yes, Dave.
I'm sure within hours we're going to be hearing from retailers that the $2 cigarette tax is going to cause them to lose business to Wawa's and Marks in the suburb. What are you going to say to that?
I'm fighting for the future of the city in supporting education for our children. Those who might smoke, in many instances, unfortunately, will do so. I don't know that someone is necessarily going to flee to the suburbs to get a pack of cigarettes. I've heard this argument before. It was the same argument on liquor by the drink many years ago. It was the same argument on when I was the councilperson putting forward the clean indoor air, no smoking in bars, restaurants, and workplaces. The end result is that we have, I don't know this off the top of my head, but I think a few restaurants have opened in the last few years in Philadelphia, even with the smoking prohibition. And so people will do what they do. I remember when I was a teenager, I worked at Snideman's Pharmacy at 56 and Larchwood. I worked there for 6 years, from 8th grade through the end of my freshman year in college. I remember that cigarettes used to cost 35 cents a pack. I remember when they went to 50 cents, folks said, people won't pay that. Then it was $1 something. Then it was $2 something. 3, 4, 5, 6. And people are still smoking. People will do what they do. I'm going to fight for the education of our children, and this is one way to ensure it. Thank you.